You are live. I guess we are live. Isa and Aneta, do you hear us very well? You can write in the comments. There might be a delay again, I think, but we'll see. Great. Now I got your message now, so there is quite a lot of delay, I think few 20 seconds or something like that. So I will probably start talking soon, and then we'll arrange the webinar that way. You can type some questions if you have anything in the comment section. I think I see them here, and probably Tia will tell me if there are more of them and if I don't see them. So please just drop any questions you have there, and I'll try to answer them while I'm talking. But let's wait for a little while so that everybody gets in who is supposed to be following live. No, se on vähän kuulokkaa, jos pitää äänestää täällä. Se on koulutuksen eteenpäin. So at least 12 people are following right now, so I guess quite soon would be good to start. Academic 2 minutes has gone by, I guess. There is some movement in the hallway, so we'll see if somebody's there. Hello everybody. Okay, I think now that it's 3 minutes past our time of starting, it's probably good enough, and we'll go on. So I will be talking today about new curriculum and STEM in Finnish upper secondary school, and last webinar was about phenomenon-based learning, which we held last year. And now we're going to talk about the new curriculum, which is about to be done right now. We are starting to work on our school's own curriculum, and right now we have the national curriculum with which we are going to work. So I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about how does that work and what changes there is coming in Finland, and there are a little more changes than previously, so it's going to shake things up a little bit in our system. So that's why I am telling you a little bit about that. And there is a new pedagogical ideas which sort of work in this new curriculum, and I'm going to introduce them to you as well. But for now, as we are in Finland, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on right now. Our last curriculum was made in 2016, and that is quite traditional in a sense. It's been more or less the same for something like 20 or 30 years within upper secondary school, and now it's going to change a little bit more. So right now the upper secondary school consists of 75 courses that you have to take. Every student chooses 75 courses at least. Of course, some of them take more but you can't take any less. I think something like 90 courses is probably the maximum that usually anybody takes, but best ones have taken over 100, I think. The schools usually arrange the year in 5 periods. Some of them use 6, but most of them right now I think are in 5 period system, where one period consists of 7 weeks, where 1 week is for the exams and 6 is for teaching, more or less. So in our school, for example, we have 75 minutes per lesson, and that means that there is going to be 3 lessons per week and 6 weeks of teaching per period. So one course is going to have a maximum of 18 lessons, and you have to go through the whole course in that. Previously we had 45-minute lessons, but I think most of the teachers at least, and probably most of the students as well, like the 75-minute system more, because you have a little bit more time to work on the topics at hand. Some schools don't use the exam week anymore, so it's a little different system in every school, but I think this is quite typical system in Finland for the most part. About 45 of those courses are mandatory courses, and that means that students have to take basically all the subjects a little bit, and then the rest they can choose. Because it depends a little bit about whether you have lots of mathematics or a little bit less mathematics, and students can choose that as well. But if you take the longer version of maths, you have to take 10 courses of it, and in the shorter one there is, I think, 7 which are mandatory, or 6. And usually the students take 5 to 7 courses per period, so they might have quite a lot of things to do in there. Some schools have 6-period system where the periods are a little bit shorter, but you have a little bit less going on at the same time. But I think the 5-period system is more popular in Finland right now. Here is an example timetable of one of my students, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of stuff going on in there. And this poor thing, for example, had in last period 7 courses, and it means that there was probably 6 exams at the end of the whole thing. And as you can see, they are in Finnish, but there is some Russian language, for example, and psychology, physics, maths, and health education, and history, and geography here, and some French as well. So this guy is taking a lot of courses, obviously, but it's quite full timetable there. In our school, the day starts at 8:15 and ends usually around 4 o'clock if you have the full day, but luckily most of the days have at least a little bit shorter versions, so they either start from 9:45 or end in 2:30. Uh, there are lots of things to do. So 75 of these courses, for example, in uh, chemistry and physics, there is only one mandatory course, but then in history and many languages, there are usually several of the mandatory courses as well, and that creates the 45 mandatory courses that everybody has to take. The rest one can choose, and that gives the ability for students to decide in where they want to concentrate their studies, and that also affects whether they are going to get into university or not. For example, if you decide to take more physics, you will probably read at least 7 courses of physics, which tells that you can actually apply to technical university or in natural sciences in university as well. So what the students choose as their non-mandatory courses will affect a lot in their future usually. There's something about physics. It was asked us already, so that's what's going on in physics exactly. And there are 7 courses of physics right now, and that's not going to change too much, but maybe a little bit. The physics 1 is mandatory course. The rest are optional. You can choose to take them if you like physics. But the first course is important for everybody, I think, because there is basic things of natural science there and some basics of measurements and how do you gather scientific information in any way. So lots of those basic things which are important in every field, in every field of science at least. Something about basic mechanics and the physical worldview as well are implemented in one course. And remember, it's 18 lessons or less, so there is quite a lot of stuff in there as well. Then there are the rest of the courses, which the final exams of the upper secondary school consists of. If you choose to read physics, all the 7 courses, then you can take the final exams on there, and that affects whether you get to the university or not. And if you want to take physics, for example, you probably have to read all of these 7 courses, which include thermodynamics, electricity, mechanics, some periodical motion and circular motion, and electromagnetism, and some modern physics, which have some quantum stuff in it as well. So the final exams consists of these courses, and they have to be available in every high school in Finland. But of course, as we talked in the previous webinar, we, for example, have way more physics courses available than this, but this is something that has to be offered in every high school. And it's quite strict what is taught on all of these, or at least the topics are. You can, of course, choose to teach them however you like, but the topics are somewhat strict. You have to go through everything that's in the national curriculum about one subject. And the national curriculum itself is divided in these courses. And this is what's going on right now, pretty much. So there are 7 courses of physics available in every high school, and similar situation in every other subject as well. There are some mandatory courses. In biology there are two, for example. In geography there is 1, I think, and then the rest are optional, and you have to choose lots of them if you want to do the final exams on them, and depending on those you choose then whether you get and how do you get to the university. And this is going to change now a little bit. Basic structure is not going to change too much, of course, for the student. They still choose some kind of courses or study modules, but now the counting system is going to be changed quite a lot. Now in the 2021 curriculum, the course as a word is non-existent anymore, so the students are not going to take courses anymore. They are now gathering study points, which is a similar system that at least in Finnish universities have, that every study module has some number of study points. For example, the basic unit in the system consists of 2 points, but then there are 1 point modules and 3 point modules, and schools are quite free to create their own study modules however they like. But there are of course some restrictions, and of course the contents of the curriculum are still somewhat strict, so of course we can't just choose what we will teach. That's still in the curriculum as it always has been. So in schools we create our own study modules, and that's exactly what we have been starting to do now. The work is going on right now, and we should be ready in 1 year just about, so that the curriculum is taking place in 2021. And national curriculum gives us some unit blocks which we use to create all the different study modules that we have to create ourselves. So those blocks, those units are there, and we create the real study modules in the school or city. And the modules are basically the old courses. They have some topics in them, and then we can create some more. It's a little bit unclear right now, and please, this is my personal take on this thing, but it's a little unclear how these units are going to be combined together, and who teaches and who evaluates and what. We are, at least most of the teachers, I think, are now a little bit lost on this curriculum, so we have to work a little more on that, because it's a little unclear how this is supposed to be actually made. But I'll go through some examples. Here are some general parts of the curriculum. For example, physics, of course, which I know a little bit more than any other topic, I guess. This is from the general part. It's a quite long text, so I translated really some key points there. It of course consists of a little bit more than that, but at least there are the key points of the physics education in our national curriculum. The first point is to support scientific thinking and developing of the worldview. I think personally, at least, the scientific thinking and critical thinking is the most important part of probably the whole high school experience, so maybe it's quite clear that it's also part of physics education as well. And of course there's meaning of physics in everyday life, society and technology, which is of course also important to talk about physics, not as a subject itself only, but also as a part of everyday life. The newer points that probably have not been there so much earlier are about critical evaluation of texts and conversations in society, because, well, the climate change, truth be told, is quite big part of this curriculum, at least in physics and probably in other natural sciences as well. And the conversation around that topic is not exactly the best of kind usually in the internet and society as in general, so it's key point in upper secondary school education that you are able to critically evaluate texts and conversation that are had in the world. And then there is of course previous experiences and new observations and viewpoints should become somewhat consistent perception of reality, and that's about the physical world we live in, of course. But the thing that is still there, which is probably not highlighted anymore so much, is the phenomenon-based learning, which is pretty much basis of the whole curriculum still. It's not there anymore so much as it previously were. We don't anymore highlight it so much, but it's still there. The basis is observations from surrounding world, and the empirical research and how to create information scientifically and how to actually gather some data or information about anything, and that's the important part, of course. So this is about the general part of the curriculum, and this is about the whole curriculum. It's in Finnish, I'm sorry, but we found this a little bit funny because it has such beautiful words so much. There in the center is reads well, good and good and balanced and civilized human being, which is the goal of the whole upper secondary school, and that is quite a lot asked, I think. At least when I look at my students, I think we have still some work to do, but towards that, balanced and civilized human beings, that's what we're working with. But I'll get back to this picture a little bit later. The physics in 2021 curriculum consists of these modules, which is pretty much the same. So the counting system is going to change pretty much. How do we actually create these study modules is going to change, but what is inside is not going to change so much. There is now 8 blocks of physics in the system. Physics 1 as a natural science, pretty much as it was before, but now it's only, well, half of what it was before. The new thing is about energy and climate change. It's also about half a course in length when we compare it to the previous one. So we are going to actually have a lot of talk about energy production, different kind of ways to produce energy, and about climate change as well. Then there is the rest is pretty much the same: thermodynamics, mechanics, periodic and wave motion, and electricity, electromagnetism, and then the quantum stuff as well in one course. What is inside of these courses is pretty much the same as well, but the basis is still in the phenomenon-based way and the empirical way of thinking, and at least these courses should be pretty much the same. Probably, if something, there is a little bit of less stuff in them, so that we can actually try to implement more of the computer-based measurements and data analysis, which has not been so big part of physics before in upper secondary school, but maybe now it's realized that we have to have some time for that as well. So this is the 2021 physics compared to the earlier one. But the pedagogical ways of thinking, I think, is in transversal competence, and the study modules can be created in many different ways, and this is something that everywhere has been used as an example of great way to create a good study module, which could be 4 study points long, and it could be called, for example, Science 1. It would combine Physics 1, Chemistry 1, and Biology 1, and somehow there should be some combining thing about all of these courses. So Physics 1 is about scientific knowledge, measurement, and modeling. Chemistry is about importance of chemistry in everyday life, lab safety, and model of the atom and periodic table. Biology 1 is about biology as a science, evolution, and taxonomic ranks, and then the idea is that we create one consistent study module which has all of these elements. And now my personal view is that it's not going to be very easy, of course, because if we try to combine all these courses or these units which have quite strict things in them. We have to take all of the things that are in them, and we can only add so much. So I'm not sure I'm going to follow the key ideas in all of these so that they come together very well. But we will see whether we will actually find a good way of combining these things as well. Because if you look at the topics in the different units, it's not so clear that they are very easy to put together. At least they in the higher ranks have thought that maybe this is a good idea, but we teachers have probably not seen the key ideas in this so well yet. But well, there is still over 1 year before we actually have to start teaching this curriculum, so maybe there are going to be some nice things in there. But this is an example module. You could actually create these kind of things. You could actually create even larger things. You could combine there some more about things. And another great example is about economy, which is in two different subjects as well. You can combine maths and society studies in one course, where you actually look at the economy as a society point of view, and then in a mathematical point of view, and that could be good as well. But who teaches what and in which time, it's still unclear, so we are not actually sure about how well this is going to turn out. But I guess there are some people who are thinking about that right now, so we'll see in a few years. I'm curious, a little skeptical and curious about this as well. The transversal competence is the biggest pedagogical ideology which is inside the new curriculum, and this is a little bit like phenomenon-based learning, I think. So I put in the parentheses the broad-ranging learning as well, because I'm not sure transversal competence is as a word very clear what does it mean. But there is what was in that picture I showed you earlier. It was probably in a wrong spot, I'm sorry. But the objective is good, balanced and civilized human being. And then there are different kind of competencies which are in this beautiful picture in those 6 different blobs inside. And all the subjects are supposed to work together somehow to create competencies in these 6 different areas. And there are global and cultural competence, well-being competence, interactions with others, ethical competence, and environmental competence, social competence, as in how to make difference in democratic society, not so much on social media, I guess. And then multidisciplinary scientific and creative competencies as well. And some of these 6 should be present in every study module we create. Somehow these key ideas should be implemented in. I think it's going to be easy because scientific and creative competence is probably part of at least every physics and maths course there is, so I'm fine with that, but I'm not sure how well I'm going to implement well-being competence or global and cultural competence in them. But there are, of course, other subjects which can take those. This is the key to the upper secondary education in Finland right now, the core part of that. But the transversal competence in itself sort of mean that these new study modules somehow should consist of lots of different subjects. So we could actually tie together some other subjects as well, not just maths in maths class and physics in physics class and history in history class, but we should create some study modules which are trying to combine those things. There is some key points, key idea around which the study module is created. In that way, it, at least I think that students are gaining more of the competencies that are needed in society nowadays. At least the industry and the work life is giving some thoughts on how the students that come from upper secondary school should be, and this is created in that sense that they should have some competencies that are needed in work life today, and they should be from varieties of area and not so much on one single topic. This is, or can be at least, quite well tying together with phenomenon-based learning we talked about last time, because now we are actually able to pick a high topic. For example, the climate change could be one, and then we can teach about the climate change or study about the climate change in all the different kinds of viewpoints we can get. We could actually take societal point of view or scientific point of view or whatever we want on climate change, psychology or biology or physical point of view. So there is potential here, and you could actually create some very interesting courses, but I'm not sure it's going to work in every subject all the time. So the changes are probably not going to be as big as we maybe think right now. But we'll see. The climate change is probably the most interesting one. We could create a course which looks a lot about that in many different ways. And the problem probably is that even though climate change is probably in physics and maybe in geography quite integral part of the course, I'm not sure we can actually find a good course in other subjects which could be tied together with that as well. But we'll see. Maybe we'll find something and we will create something amazing. I hope so, at least. But the transversal competence is the idea that the student should have more varying competencies, and by combining different subjects together, it should be achieved, at least. That's what I think in the ministry or something like that. I promised to talk about STEM a little bit as well, because it's the topic of our project course and it's of course present in everyday life quite a lot, but it's a large subject in general: science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And science alone as a word, of course, has inside a lot. There are biology and physics and chemistry, and then there is the mathematics. So of course there's lots of STEM subjects in the curriculum 21. But maybe more interesting question is, how is it seen in different subjects than the clear STEM subjects as well? So there should be something about STEM in other subjects as well. And we probably should combine these modules in the way that there could be some maybe interesting STEM points of view in many other study modules, but we'll see how well we can actually find good ideas for those. But STEM is natural part of transversal competence because, well, the message from the industries is in a way that the students should be able to code and students should be able to solve problems, and the classic methods are not so important anymore, but they should be critical and able to solve different kind of problems themselves. And of course STEM is very key point in that problem solving, because mathematics and science is basically all the time just problem solving. But how well it will be implemented still remains to be seen, because we do not have these study modules yet. We need to create them ourselves, and how well can we combine them is unclear, because the contents of every subject and every unit are quite strict, I'm not sure it actually will bend to combining them very well together. I'm curious to see that, but we will actually have to do that work a little bit later. And if it is possible to create great STEM study modules, it will be probably really interesting and great, but I'm not sure because of the contents in every unit are quite strictly uh, quite strict. We have to actually teach all those stuff, and where do we find the key point that's binding everything together? That's really hard question. But there are some examples, at least this one, which I took from English curriculum. Usually in languages, all the different varieties of contents are available, and in English, for example, the sustainable future and science is topic of one course in the next curriculum. So this is quite clear that different kind of STEM subjects are included in many different subjects as well, in English, in Swedish, in other subjects as well. But it's more clear in the English, for example, than in history or philosophy. I actually asked our philosophy teacher that is there some STEM stuff in philosophy curriculum, and it's basically quite non-existent right now, but she said that she usually talks a little bit about artificial intelligence and what is knowledge, and it could be combined quite well that way. But right now the national curriculum does not support that too much, and I think that's probably situation in many other subjects as well. For example, in psychology or history, there's probably not so much about different kind of technological and technological subjects anyway. But English 5 has lots of this. It's the topic of the whole course. So also in the English course, you have to talk about popular science text and source criticism and these kind of things, which are also big part of the, for example, the physics curriculum. So there are lots of these things available. But I think that even in the new curriculum, it's still quite strict contents in every module. So you can't just simply put them in everywhere, or you can't combine everything very easily. But we will see what it will bring, and it's at least interesting to work with this. But I'm also a little skeptic about this thing, because only the system that how we create these different kind of study modules is actually new. The contents of the different units are still the same, and they are divided quite strictly, so it's not so easy to actually talk about different kinds of topics in one course. So we will see. Maybe in 5 years there will be a new curriculum again, and it will fix some problems that are apparent in this one, because the last one was actually in 2016, so we did not even test this one out before this new one is coming already, and that's a little weird way of doing anything, I think. But well, I guess in the ministry they know what they are doing, or you would hope so, at least. But I think this is pretty much as I have to say today, and it's about the next curriculum and what's going to happen in Finnish high school. If you have any questions, please put them up into YouTube chat, or I will get to them in 20 seconds or half a minute if there are any. Okay, so Isa asks whether the teachers have any influence on the new curriculum. Yes and no. The general teacher, for example, me or my colleagues here, we don't have uh, too much influence on the national curriculum. But in the process of creating the national curriculum, I think something like 4 out of 5 people creating that are actually teachers. So it is teachers that actually create the curriculum mostly. But of course, there are lots of different things that affect. Then on the our school level in our city, for example, it is just the teachers that are actually creating the our curriculum. But we don't usually change too much about the national one because it's only going to tie our hands more. So it's more or less the same. But there are of course some little things that we can actually add there. And of course, when we have some extra courses in our school, we have to create the curriculum for those as well. So that's what we actually do. But I think the national curriculum is somewhat loose enough so that we can actually still quite well work on the around it. Basically, if we want to use some key points from some other areas, we can take them if we want to, but it's, well, it's created by teachers, maybe for teachers, I guess, to do. There is another question on evaluation. Do you grade your anyhow during the course period, or do you leave the evaluation just for this exam at the end of the course period? Great question, and it different. It varies around different teachers, and some of them do more and some of them do less. And the exam week system is more or less going away, I guess, right now. In some schools there are these evaluation weeks which do not necessarily have exams in them, but some other kind of content as well. And in our school, I think many teachers use the final exam during the exam week as basis of the evaluation, but you could vary it as well. In maths and science, at least my personal view is that most of the grade is coming from the final exam. But then, of course, there might be some smaller exams during the course, and it's never completely summative. You have to use some formative type of evaluation as well, which can consist of how well the student is doing homeworks, or is he or she actually studying during the lessons and what they're doing. So there is some different ways of doing the evaluation, and everybody should use some other than the final exam only. It's actually said in the curriculum as well that you should always use some other evaluation methods as well. But I'm first to admit that mine are quite small ones, but maybe I will do better in the next curriculum also. But many teachers do much more than I do, for example. Many of them do, but some probably do the same or the less. It depends quite a lot on teacher. Anything else, I guess? Okay, if there are no more questions or anything, I guess I will thank you for your being here. There were at least 10 viewers in this webinar, so it will be available into YouTube later on. It's going to be there unedited completely, so if you want to share this information with someone, please just link it up and I will gain my YouTube millions that way. But otherwise, I'm just glad my laptop didn't set on fire as well. There is one more question. As we have the modules of 3 different subjects, is there a situation that there could be more than one teacher in the class? Yes, there is, or there can be, let's say that way. I think it's the idea in the new curriculum which is not said very clearly in it, that maybe we should have some co-working within teachers, that we create courses maybe together as well. And of course, if we combine the different kinds of subjects together, for example, if we take biology, chemistry and physics together as in the example class, I don't know anything about biology, well, more than that I studied in upper secondary school myself, so I couldn't actually teach that. So there has to be another teacher for that part of the course. And I probably couldn't teach chemistry as well. So in that sense, I think it's, if there are lots of these combined modules, there must be different teachers in the same classroom, but they don't have to be there at the same time, I guess. But if we actually want to create something that helps tie these things together, then I think it would be necessary, but I'm not sure how much money and time can be spent on these things, so we'll see how it turns out. But that's the idea, that different teachers create a course maybe together. But I think also one teacher, if one teaches both biology and chemistry, then maybe she could create a course by herself and that way create nice combined thing together. But at least main idea is that there should be something like 2 teachers or 3 teachers creating one course. Okay, thank you for the questions. I think I'm going to end the stream right now, and yeah, please, if you want to just share this up and I'll get the advert millions that are coming my way. But thank you, and we will see you, at least you guys that are part of this course, in few months in Finland. Bye bye.